I will say it's not often that we get to have a film remake of a film from not too long ago by the same director making pretty much the same film. But it makes for a very interesting study in contrast.
I can't do this anymore. Just get me out.
We pray in the temple of the low god.
Wait. And today we have Malum. This was actually a very fascinating exercise for me. I really liked the journey that I've been on through this. And so I saw the trailer for this, and I said, that looks so effing familiar. Where do I know? Like, I've seen this story before. And I thought on it for a few minutes, and I was like, this is Last Shift. Is someone copying Last Shift? For those of you that don't know, I actually recommend this film. Last Shift is a film that came out, I can't tell if it was 2014 or 2015, but I liked it a lot. I'm a fan of horror. I love survival horror. And this is like survival horror, supernatural thriller horror, but the whole premise of this, and getting into the next film, similar premise. Last Shift is like a gal who is a rookie in the police force, and her first gig, they're like, all right, cool, go over to this old station. It's the last night it's going to be open. We're decommissioning this thing. It's falling apart. We have a fancy new station over yonder in town. It's the last shift. Should be easy. Go take care of it. And then while she's there, she starts to learn that, oh, you know, it's abandoned, but there's some weird noises and stuff going on. What is all this? And she learns that there was this cult, a very Manson-esque cult. This police station, on the news, they said they raided the compound, took out the cultists, done. But turns out they brought the cultists back in. They detained them, and the cultists just hung themselves in the cell they were in. And then ever since then, things started getting really weird around there, and it's part of why they were gonna all go to a new station. So basically, we the audience are like, oh, that bitch is haunted. Like, that's what it is. And then boom, the movie ensues. But then the question is it really haunted? Is it in her head? Is she losing it? How much of this is real? And that's where it gets me really going, because then it's survival horror, but then you're like, what's real? Because some films have done that poorly and also well, like the difference between what's actually spooky and happening and what isn't. I hadn't watched Last Shift for years. The memory I had of it was that it was really creepy and I really enjoyed it. And now I see this film and I'm like, who's copying this? Same director, it turns out. Anthony de Blasi, I think that's how you say his name. Mr. de Blasi over here. Evidently, he made the previous one on a smaller budget, and he wasn't able to really do completely everything that he wanted to do. So now here we are, nearly a decade later. I think it's been more closer to 7 or 8 years. But he's like, hey, I have a bigger budget now. I've got more experience. I always wanted to do something a bit more involved with this film, so he decided to go ahead and remake it. So I saw that. I love the story, love the idea. I'm like, you know what? I'm in. Here's the thing. I went and saw it, and then I wasn't sure how to feel. And I was like, am I misremembering the original film? Funny enough, you can watch it for free on YouTube right now. If you have premium, no commercials either. So literally, within the same night, I saw the new one, and then I was like, I want to refresh my memory. Should have seen the first one first, didn't. Saw the remake, came home, watched the original, and then now I feel fully qualified to speak on both. As much as it pains me to admit it, I prefer the original. Not to say that Malum is bad. Before getting into specifics, I think part of it is that just I respect a low budget film, especially a low budget horror, because if your film is low budget, you really have to work with what you got in terms of like actors, what your direction, the scares, the writing, like it's got to be strong because you can't afford to have too much fancy shit going on. And I feel like in Last Shift, all those strengths are, for me, they're up there. The few critics on Rotten Tomatoes agreed. Audience members didn't so much for some reason. I really enjoyed it. I respected it. I liked it. At rewatching this one alone in my house, the original, I was creeped out. I hadn't felt that way in a minute, where I didn't really want to like leave empty hallways or leave any lights off. I left a light on, then went to bed. I was unnerved. It's a leading lady again, but now it's a leading lady of color, which I think is really cool in general. Here's the thing. I like the new leading lady, Miss Jessica Sula. She's been in some stuff, but nothing that's like too crazy or big AAA. I liked her, don't get me wrong. And the one she's competing, it's not really competition, but the original actress from Last Shift is Juliana Harkavy. They both have similar like filmographies in terms of nothing too fancy, but they have experience in the industry with, you know, some projects, decent stuff, nothing too great, nothing too bad, depends who you ask. And this is going to be a video for a very niche audience if you're like me and you were curious between the two films. I prefer the first woman's portrayal more, only because she joined the force for the sole reason of being a cop, because her father was a cop in the force. He was one of the officers gunned down in that cult raid in the first movie. But there was nothing more to it. He just was an officer, he served in that station, got gunned down, and his daughter was like, I also want to be a cop. In the original, her performance is great, and when shit starts getting spooky, she doesn't lose it like that. She's like more and more becoming more unnerved and a little bit unraveled, but she's still trying to be professional. It's her first, like one of her first days, if not the first day. She's still trying to be a competent police officer, so she's following protocol. She's calling codes in. She's trying to do her job. But also, she's like seeing the threads of a mystery there, and she's like, what is this? And every now and then she bookmarks it to get back to police work, but then she's like, no, there's something going on here with whatever is the undercurrent of this. I need to find out, because this is too much spooky shit for a coincidence. And then as it goes on, the narrative unfolds, and then you wonder, like, is she losing her mind? Is she just trying to survive the spooky stuff? What's going on here? In the new one, they lean much heavier into the cult shit. They lean really heavy into the cult plot, to the point, do I call this spoilers? I don't know. I don't really care. I mean, if you really care, watch the film, but I can't really do a comparison without talking about it. In the original, we're only in the police station and immediately outside of it in the parking lot. That's what I love, is that claustrophobic feeling of this one station, and like, you know, there's, you know, how long do we stay here? When should we leave? Can we leave? Is there escape? And this one, she's like, you know, going here and there. She's driving around in the first act. It isn't until like the start of Act 2 that she like is then in the station and we're locked in there. And I didn't like that necessarily, but they did it for the cult stuff, because they're expanding on it and saying, oh, her father went crazy, and sometime after the raid on the compound, he like shoots up the police station, blows his head off. So he doesn't die during the compound assault. He survives that, helping rescue some girls, gets back, loses his mind, takes his life, and then his daughter still wants to become a cop. But here's what I did and didn't like. I would have loved that choice that she says, because now she's in this. Again, she's a rookie. Instead of being handed this station, she requests it, and they make a point in the script. She specifically requests to work the final shift here. Why? I don't know, because her father worked at this station, and her last name carries some very toxic weight with it because of what her father did. So she's in the station because she wants to be. And you think, okay, well, you know, at least she's going to try to be a cop, maybe follow the same thing. But here's the thing, and as the film goes on, you realize this, and people point it out, she even points it out, unless I misread the whole situation, she's not a great cop. She's not. She's a woman who is trying to figure out what happened to her father, why her father did what he did. So her reactions, you know, although I think she's wrestling with it, like she wants to commit to the cop bit, but she doesn't have what it takes to be an officer of the law, in good and bad ways. She has too much heart. She's too altruistic. So, but that means that her reactions are like unprofessional. And one of my biggest peeves in psychological horror, if you think you're going crazy in a horror film, the last thing you want to do is make yourself look fucking crazy. You don't want to say dumb, crazy stuff and make yourself look insane. Smile. Smile did this. I really enjoyed Smile. I would have loved Smile. But the lead character, who was like a therapist, by the way, she worked in psychology. This woman should be a cop. She should have better training than this. When things start going weird, after the first couple spooks, almost immediately start spiraling and saying this type of stuff to her superiors and comrades over the phone, like, something's going on here. Are you seeing shit? I'm seeing shit. I don't like that choice. And I get they want to make her vulnerable and want to show that, clearly she's not in this to truly be a cop. She's trying to find out what happened to her dad. That's what I got from it. But it was a change that could have worked, but for me, because of how it was executed, didn't work as well. But I still liked her as a leading lady. I thought she was the best actor in the whole film. Both these leading ladies, great jobs respectively, trying to do their part for what the script called for. Gotta give it props. This film is definitely a glow up. You can tell, it's more modern, probably better cameras, better audio equipment. Visually, it looks better. It's got a higher budget. When the scares happen, they look even better. It's a lot, as much as it can be, it's practical, or they probably try to stage some stuff to be practical, almost entirely so. It's nice to see a film that I liked so much get a glow up and be rebooted. I mean, with all the horror game remakes this year, it's now getting horror movie remakes as well. All things considered, it could have looked a lot worse, and it didn't. And to their credit again, it is more ambitious storytelling by choosing to, I don't know if this was his original intent in the first film or not, but by choosing to delve more into this cult, which, by the way, that's why it's called Malum. I think it was the farm they raided, that's like where they rescued the girls from. They try to give you more plot and try to flesh out the cult shit more, which honestly, all things considered, they do pretty well. More scenes, dialogue involving the cultists, and by factoring in both her dad and her mom, who her mom was only ever on a phone call in the original movie and now is in person in several scenes, that adds more character and more depth to the characters, and I appreciated that. I liked the attempt at fleshing out the characters in the world. And I will say the sound design, by the way, super creepy. There were a couple moments where, like, as she's exploring, again, part of what's so creepy about this is it's, you've always an abandoned school at night, government facilities, but in this case a police station. There's wet and dingy locker rooms and a big gymnasium that the lights are out, like one light in the corner, and shadows and everything, like whenever a noise, just something creaking, or if, in this case, the spooky stuff, the pitter patter of wet feet as you and like sounds getting closer and further away. I'm giving myself goosebumps right now. That shit is so unnerving in survival horror. When you bring the music down and let the sound design speak for itself, that's what's creepy. Putting yourself in the shoes of the character as you're also feel like you're wandering the hall with her, like, oh my god, check your fucking corners, check your six, like what is that? What was that noise? What was the fucking, and then you're just like, you're unnerved as well if you let yourself be transported into that film. Sound design's great, no complaints there. It was very creepy in this, little whispers, little voices, and you're like, what am I hearing? What's real, what's not? It was pretty true to its source material. Everything from lines that were just like verbatim the same, scenes that were just, given a glow up or only fixed a little bit differently, but like overall, not a shot-for-shot remake, but there was enough where it stayed true to the source material, but there were diversions, there was stuff expanded upon, minor moments cut, but I like how true to the original it was. This did feel like a remake, but what doesn't work for the film for me, what really drags it down, because I've sung its praises for a minute now. Like I said, I prefer the lead character in the first one as opposed to this one. I've already delved into all that. I wish there was less ambiguity to it, because at one point they say, she tries to call into this guy and say, hey, I'm seeing this stuff. I went in the holding cells where you told me not to go, and I saw some spooky shit. And the guy's like, you can't go back there. There's mold back there. You're going to be seeing all sorts of kind of shit, which plants the seed in your head of, oh, okay, so maybe they're going to really investigate. Maybe she really is going to go crazy, because it's like, I like that shit a lot. Like, I don't know if you saw Outlast 2. Both Outlast games delve into it, but Outlast 2 especially. If you know the game, you know what I'm talking about. If not, the whole ideology is that there's like, crazy, funny enough, also crazy cult shit going on. But because of, in Outlast 2, it was a radio signal. In this one, it could have been the mold. And the idea that, the mold makes you hallucinate. And because there's people or things around you, it's like echo chamber, confirmation bias. Because it's heavy in her mind, because she's there for her father, who was involved apparently in the cult. And because the cult committed suicide in these cells and they were in the station. You know, maybe it's not haunted. Maybe she's going crazy because it's so prevalent in her head and she's hallucinating all this shit. But then they actually have like cultists around the town, like physical, like they've returned. Like some of the survivors of that family have returned and they somehow know she's there and they're trying to fulfill some like demonic temple of the low god prophecy and bringing a demon about with like sacrifices, or I don't know. There's too much ambiguity between like, okay, so what, the cult stuff is real then, because then the girls that survived are brought back and they're slowly gunned down one by one as this woman's trying to run around the station and take out the cultists and save the girls, figure out what's going on. But it's weird that they planted the seed to begin with about the mold and how it could all be just like she's just seeing shit. By the end of it, you literally, you're not really, like, you are and you aren't given an answer. At least that's the way that I interpret it. Maybe I gotta rewatch it. Maybe I gotta do a more comprehensive analysis. But literally, it could have been either one. Normally, I don't mind ambiguous endings or plot elements or anything like that, but the way that it was executed in this, I was like, okay, I really would like an answer, because the first one gives you an answer. By the end of the first last shift, it's decided that, oh no, she did lose her mind. But then the question is, okay, did she lose her mind, or is there actually, like, is she succumbing to the spiritual, supernatural power of those that have passed in the cult? Like, there could still be supernatural elements to it because some spooky shit's going down. This one, when you have demons on screen, you're like, okay, how much of this could truly be in her head or not? Especially since they're involving her father and her mother, and they're confirming that they were involved in the cult, which adds validity to the cult side. Then why would you introduce the mold to begin with and call into question the whole thing? You're just ripping the audience's attention in two different vectors. Like, you're confirming so much, but then confirming the possibility of it being something else. It's just like, it's just frustrating. The family cult stuff gets weird, and it muddles the stew more than it helps it, I feel. And the ending especially, the ending leaves me with more confusion than anything. It wasn't as bad as the ending for Men, for a majority of reasons. I know it's a random reference to make, but it just made me think of it. I don't know how to feel. Prefer Last Shift as opposed to Malum, which, by the way, I think the marketing for Malum, the trailer is great. I think the name is not great. I think that's, why would you just call it Last Shift again, or call it, like, you know, the shift that is last, or just call it anything besides Malum? Because, like, it's like 65, right? Like, you're like, well, what the... You see, you know, if you're just reading it in the fucking marquee, or you see a poster, the poster looks good, the poster looks creepy as hell, but you're like, what the hell's Malum? What? That's nothing I've ever heard of before. Why would we go see Malum when we can go see John Wick or something like that? I don't know who approved that in marketing, but the name's not great. Look, I was considering giving this a high 3 out of 5 at first, but the more that I'm thinking about it, I know the friend that I went to go see with it gave it a much lower score, but I'm giving it credit where credit's due. It tries. It's a glow up. I think the lead is great. The other actors, not as much. But visually, the sound design, odd note about the sound design, by the way, but whenever a jump scare happened, it's like they turned the volume down. I actually, for the first time ever, I wanted the jump scares to be louder. The jump scares didn't hit as much as the creepy little side noises did, because I don't know if it was the theater we were in, I don't know if I have to watch it louder at home, but I felt like the volume was turned down whenever a jump scare happened, which I think is like it's like the opposite effect if that's what you're going for, you know? Visually, it's a nice coat of paint. I think the sound design, for the most part, is good. I mean, cinematography in this creepy police station, they nailed the atmosphere. Atmosphere is up there for sure. Leading lady's doing what she can with what she has. I love how much more ambitious the storytelling was, the scope of it. I like the choice to delve more into characters and cult and make her father and mother more involved, but I didn't like the execution of it all. It could have been as good, if not better, than Last Shift, its predecessor, but it wasn't. There were a few missteps, and it was a shame because I wanted it to be as good, if not better.
We're this close.
As it is, I would probably give the original Last Shift like a 4 out of 5. It's not perfect either, but for my enjoyment in the film and all that, I'd give Last Shift a 4 out of 5. But for Malum, it's a step, it's a step that was like in the right direction, but ended up kind of being a misstep as well, which is why I would give Malum I give it a solid 3 out of 5. I almost gave it a high 3 out of 5, but I can't in good faith and conscience do it. It's not a bad film. it's not a bad film, but it's not great either, and it's so frustrating. But as far as remakes go, it was a solid remake, but I had too many complaints about it to justify giving it a rating similar to Last Shift. Last Shift, I think, is the better film. I personally enjoyed it more. Maybe don't go see it in theater, but this would be a super fun one to watch at home. You turn the lights off by yourself, or you snuggle up with your gal pal, or your friends, or what have you. It's still an entertaining, decent watch. It's better than Skinamarink. Oh shit! Shitting on that never gets old. That's all I gotta say about Malum. But thank you guys and gals so much for watching. And stay tuned for the next episode, whatever I make. I'll see you guys in the next movie review. Goodbye. Good night.